No, not Vector, Hector. Hector! You know, Hector! Come on! Yes, finally! Come, no! Wrong, Hector, look, go. Yes, not you, go. All right, Hector, okay? Hector!
Shadowversity.
Thank you to everyone who's come to watch this video. It really means the world, but unfortunately there are a lot of people who are not getting notified of my content. YouTube is currently deranking and suppressing content like mine in preference to other content, and a lot of my viewers and subscribers are not actually getting notified. One of the ways in which is actually truly a tremendous help in trying to break through this type of suppression is by subscribing. If you enjoy the content, please do subscribe and join us in the future. Liking and commenting helps boost the interactions on the video, which makes the algorithm realize that more people are engaged. And of course, sharing is absolutely really crucial. Ringing the bell only does so much to try and get notifications. YouTube has actually not been notifying people who have even the bell rung, and so if you really want to ensure that you get notified when I upload, you can follow me on Facebook or Twitter. I announce when I upload on those platforms, and the ultimate way to make sure you never miss an upload and get the notification is by subscribing on my website. We'll send out email notifications to those people who are signed up on the website. There'll also be special announcement and even potential bonus content for those people who subscribe on the website. For everyone who's doing that, thank you so much. It means the world, and especially those people who are going even the extra step and supporting me through the donation platforms. Currently, the primary ones have been Subscribestar and Patreon, but there's a new one that is brilliant called Utreon. Utreon is a video hosting platform that also does donation-style subscriptions like the memberships on YouTube currently, but it's also a great video hosting platform. It's new, it's working really, really well. YouTube is caring less and less about content creators who are making content like me. I'm not the only one in this boat. So please do support the creators that you want to ensure that they can keep making content and that you get the content that you want to see. Genuinely thank you to everyone who's supporting in any way possible. It means the world, and I do hope you enjoy this video.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and welcome back to Fight Scene Autopsy, the most pedantic deconstruction of not only just sword-based fight scene, but now weapon-based fight scenes here on YouTube. And in this episode, we're taking a look at a famous one, and people say it's really good. We'll find out just how good it is. This is Achilles versus Hector from the movie Troy. Now, I don't think I can hold these through the whole video, but, you know, this is classic kind of well, it's actually not classic hoplite warfare. The shield and spear combo stereotypically was part of a shield formation, okay? You know, right? I part it with your guys on either side. Fighting one-on-one with a sword and shield, like, they make it look, well, we'll see how good they make it look. But there is a question to ask about how viable would a big spear like this be, because when you get up close, short sword and shield is a great combo. And look, they do end up using swords, but more as the backup after the spear goes. If you're really going to combat and you had a shield, this shield helps you nullify a lot of the reach advantage of the spear. You'll get in close, and then you have, the Romans did it to great effect. Short swords and shield is a deadly combo. So maybe they should have led with that. But let's take a look. We're going to break it down, go in deep, and have a look to see how good this fight scene really is. You don't want to do that to any sharpened weapon. Like, sand is very coarse, actually. Like, it's a good way to just shoving a spear into the ground like that. It's almost like grinding it against rocks.
And it gets everywhere.
It gets everywhere. So, don't throw. Okay. At least they tried to justify it in the narrative. If you haven't seen this film before, minor spoilers, someone close to Achilles was killed. And Hector thought it was Achilles because he was wearing Achilles' armor. And so Achilles took off the helmet and said, so you know who you're fighting, right? But then you should have put the helmet back on. Helmets are really useful. It's the first protective item you would wear above any other armor. You have, like, you could survive hits to many parts of the body as long as it doesn't hit vital organs, but a good solid hit to the head, even if it doesn't fully kill you instantly, if it doesn't pierce the skull, blood pouring down over the eyes if there's a cut above the eyes, it's just protect the face and the head. So that was pretty ridiculous. But also, something else I noticed, if we go back, so have a look at that nasal guard right there. This is supposed to be metal, but we see it bend. So watch this carefully. Like, whoop, it just like bends out, showing that this is like a foam plastic helmet. Why couldn't they have just given him something solid, metal helmet, right? Yeah, anyway. And then they both bad move. Don't get rid of the helmets. So unfortunately, we're not off to a good start. I like the narrative thing, and at least they tried to justify it. Seriously, it's like, now you know who you're fighting, back on. And it goes back into that drawn-out trope where you think you need to see the person's face. Hollywood is so obsessed with that they've even done like ridiculous half helmets. In the last duel, have a look at the half helmet. All right, so now we're getting into the action. Achilles is approaching. Look, I like that, what Achilles does here, okay? Is it necessary? Maybe. This is the thing. Misdirecting like this, you actually see it done in sports, where if you've played rugby or gridiron, depending on what your terminology is, right? So one of the things I played casually in Australia, this thing called touch rugby, where tackling is like you just have to touch them, and that's considered a tackle. So trying to avoid even touching, doing those things ends up being the key to misdirect and get someone to lunge that way, where they think you're zigging, but you zag, you know? This could actually be effective in combat. Hector doesn't really fall for it, and that's one of the things that I will praise about this fight scene. Achilles has a very distinct style. As to how effective it is, well, they sell it, in my opinion, and Hector is more just, I guess, practical, utilitarian, and Achilles is more agile. You could almost say a bit more flamboyant, but I have actually sparred with people that have very flamboyant styles, and sometimes it only serves as a bit of a misdirect, like, what am I going to do, kind of thing. It works here. So, lunge, forward thrust. Is he withdrawing his shield here in this thrust? So, we go back, Achilles, it's like you're not even using your shield. So, shield kind of there, but then we withdraw it for that thrust. That's one of the, you see it in video games a lot and everything. You can absolutely thrust, even with like a lunge thrust, and keep the shield in front, okay? It's not that hard, even throwing your shoulder into it. Look at how much protection a big round shield still offers when you do a big thrust like this, okay? But Hollywood's like, do you see a difference here versus here, you know? And what I find interesting, Hector, he does this big thing, it's like, but what are you doing? You have a shield, all right, and a spear, and this fight scene is praised a lot, but as you break it down slowly, I'm already seeing a large amount of errors just from a practical combative standpoint. If you're unaware what I do here on Scene Autopsy, I'm mainly looking at how realistic a fight scene is from a practical standpoint, not necessarily from an entertaining standpoint, because this fight scene is very entertaining. It's got a lot of motion movement. There is like, there are peaks and waves in this fight scene where someone gets an upper hand, and then they have to change weapons, and so it's a dynamic, evolving fight scene, which makes for really entertaining stuff. What I encourage and believe is that you can achieve such great, enjoyable fight scenes with more practical, realistic, combative maneuvers, and when you do that, it actually enhances it even more, because, you might not be a trained pianist, but you can still tell a bad rendition on the piano, even if you don't know perfectly. That's actually the same with fight scenes. Fight scenes that have far more martial validity just look more authentic, even to the untrained eye. And when you combine it with, a great fight scene that has almost a narrative to itself, where there are ways it gets, more dynamic, and then they change weapons, and there's a bit of a story happening to it, makes it even better. And there's examples of people doing this just on YouTube. We see the example from Corridor Digital with their more realistic lightsaber fight scene, and we see the example from Adoria, with a really more authentically realistic longsword fight scene that has those waves and flows with more practical, realistic maneuvers. And so Hector, when he does this big, like this, you're holding your shield, mate. You should have just blocked with the shield, block, and then you're still holding your spear. So instead of wasting all this movement on that, block, counter thrust, get Achilles to block, and so they should, like, this fight scene should be shield blocking in a really cool dynamic way. It's a block, and then they do switch and, maybe thrust here, then that gets hit, and they have to spin around, and they're doing these big dynamic things with the shields, because the shield can be a very dynamic element to a fight scene. Just have a look at how Roland Warzeka does. He studies a lot of Viking kind of period combat, and he uses and has seen the shield in like this incredibly dynamic way. But here, they're basically ignoring it, like the shield is there so far. We'll see how much they utilize the shield, but the shield, honestly, should be one of the primary elements of this fight scene over just the spear. The spear is, you want to thrust with it, but in terms of dynamic movements and stuff, and blocking and things, the shield should just be going crazy. So big lunge. All right, this was interesting. He lunges, let me go back. And Achilles comes with a swipe of the shield. That's interesting, but the question is, why did he choose to swipe with the shield when he has a more deadly weapon in his other hand? And it really wasn't about position. He lunged. Okay, maybe if the spear was forward and he has to withdraw it to attack again, then he's lunging with the shield. Yes, points. I think this is a good move. So he smacks. Then Hector raises the shield to block. Good. Then they separate, and Achilles kind of jogs around, almost like this was a test engagement. I really like that. I swear. It's a quick exchange of a couple of strikes, bang, bang, and they separate, and they just kind of getting a feel for, each opponent where they're at. And it sets an interesting pace, and it does draw you in. So in terms of, I think, just the pacing of this fight scene, so far, yeah, really good. And maybe my criticism with the shield, hey, hi Achilles, maybe my criticism for the shield only applied to that first exchange. We'll see how much they use the shields as the fight continues. So this is like an interesting one. It's like Achilles, one of his signature moves, a jumping attack. There are possible criticisms here, but those criticisms might not completely apply. One of the problems or dangers when you do like a jumping attack, you can't dodge in the air. Someone could really take advantage of that and just thrust. But there is one thing that could help mitigate the danger, and that's the shield. And what do we see? Achilles right here? Right there. And so he's actually kind of holding it in place to protect himself. The other question is, does a jump like this make a better attack? Maybe. It's basically run up and is going for this big attack and throwing all the momentum he has into the strike. So I would think there might be some benefit. The other thing that helps sell it is the distance. See where Achilles is and see where Hector is, okay? Is not like jumping so close that Hector can easily exploit a weakness. And the other thing that helps sell the jump, he has a weapon of very long reach. And so if you tried to do a jumping attack with a smaller weapon, that would be a lot more dangerous with a shorter weapon. Now, we do see Achilles do a jumping attack with a shorter weapon at the beginning of the film. So not sure, but I think with a spear, it helps mitigate a lot of the risks far more. Yeah, and I would say a strike that does land, right where it does look like he's aiming there, would almost be an instant kill, especially with how deep he got that short sword in the beginning. Seems to be kind of trying to do that here. And there are more things that help mitigate the risks. And then because of the style, look, I do acknowledge that this is a fight scene, you want it to be entertaining. So sometimes you want to throw something in that's just going to look really cool. And if you can sell it, absolutely go for it. And I think right here, I do think they sell this really well. It makes the fight scene look even more dynamic. Yeah, this is good. I like it. So big strike. Hector blocking with his shield. Good stuff, mate. Now, they do something really here. A couple of things, okay? Depending on the type of shield of the period. So these aren't necessarily like Spartan shields where they're thick wood and then they have like a layer of copper over top. And what you'll notice with Spartan shields, they have a very distinct kind of lip and rim. And that's actually to help it rest on the shoulder because they're so darn heavy. These ones don't look to be anything like that. They're not that level type of hoplite shield. They're far thinner, and by the look of it, a spear with this amount of power would actually have a high chance of puncturing the shield. Okay, so if we pay attention to the sound here, ready? That is a distinct metal clang. So they're trying to say that this was a metal on metal strike, that these shields either have a metal lining over top or are just pure metal to begin with. That would make them really heavy, okay? And so much so that the maneuvering that they're kind of doing would be more difficult, and they'd honestly have to use them more like the hoplites do, where there's a lip that rests on the shoulder and it's kind of fixed there. You can still maneuver around it and get it, but doing dynamic, like things like that, with the shield that heavy, if it's metal, it's actually not going to happen. Look, these are basically superhumans. Kind of, they're mythological characters. In the actual like Iliad, Hector is said to have like this insanely long spear. And they, in the production of the film, I remember them saying, you know, they tried to see if that, and it's just way too impractical. They couldn't have given Hector a spear that long, and so. They kind of go into the mythological levels, and could we give a bit of an allowance that they're just so strong they can handle a heavy shield like that? Maybe. Could you stab through a shield? That actually depends on what the shield is made out of. These were wooden shields. This strike right here that Achilles is doing right down, that would actually penetrate the shield with the amount of force it's putting behind it. And if not, you will have blunted or dulled that spearhead, especially if it is bronze, okay? This should be Bronze Age stuff, when we shouldn't be steel. So the Battle of Troy is estimated to happen around 1100-ish BC, and in most cases that is well before even iron weapons are around. There are rare cases of iron weapons and even steel weapons as early as like 700 BC, and some cases of steel before then, but for the general trend, no, this most likely should be bronze. And bronze, under a huge impact, like especially a point, they have massive problems in retaining their points. It would just ruin the spear. The weapons and just the weapons right now. The armor is a different topic. The weapons have unreasonable durability in this film and fight scene, whereas the armor has unreasonable, like, uselessness in it. So yes, this would definitely damage the spear. Like, look at that. I do like Hector's reaction. Like, that knocked him back. He's like, whoa, that was a big hit. Interesting, the attack here, right? Achilles going for, what are you doing with your shield, Achilles? No, and Hector, why is your spear lowered like that? Keep your spear up, even couch it if you need to. Ready to just, the fact that he's just holding it down like that, it's not good. And yeah, what Achilles is doing here with his shield, again, he's just lowering it. But then he goes for a low attack. This might... I'm a little bit more critical of this low attack because unless you hit an artery on the leg, you're not going to incapacitate... Well, look, you could immobilize them with a good solid hit at the legs. If they actually pretend armor does something, okay, Achilles wouldn't want to aim for the chest because it's armored. And so maybe that would make the legs a more viable target if they treated armor properly, and that you wouldn't be out, unless it's a really powerful thrust, because it depends on the type of armor. The Greeks even had a type of linen armor called the linothorax. There's a couple of videos done on it, which is like layered linen with organic glues tied together, and it was surprisingly effective, all right? It could stop arrow shots of the period and would have a good chance of defending spear, but I think you could even get through a linothorax with a really big thrust with a very sharp spear. So, okay, maybe he's aiming for the limbs because of the armor, but that would only make sense if they're consistent with that and actually show armor doing something. Now, Hector's response is interesting. He blocks low with his shield, but because his spear is lowered, it's going to be harder for him to do a counter attack. And so blocks low, kind of throws it aside here. See, this is like throws it aside. The spear goes with it. It's like if his spear was up, he could have blocked and thrust over top. Unfortunate. Now, Achilles, he pulls back and is ready for another thrust again. And now his overarm. Hey, I like to see that. Could show some, variance. Either overarm grip or underarm. Hector is not in a good position. He's holding the shield behind him because he threw the spear aside. This is interesting. Achilles kind of goes a thrust with the back end, switches to the front, and then is kind of doing this. It mixes it up. I like it. So there, then almost a backhanded thrust. Hector blocking with his shield. Good to see. Achilles. So this would not have a lot of force or power behind it. I think they sell it. He actually gets a slap against Hector's face with this, by the look of it. Slap right there. Hector gets thrown back, and then he does a bit of a slash with his spear. Can you slash with spears? Depends on the type of spearhead. Doesn't mean you'd never try it. And he's in a really bad position here, so he needs to bring that shield back. And look, if that helps ward off your opponent and you're not in a position to be able to switch it, well, maybe he could have done that. Would it have been just as fast to go like that into a thrust versus a wide slash like that, which would have far more lethal capacity, because the spearheads that we see, like that Achilles and Hector doing, they're small. They're not hewing spears. So a hewing spear, kind of similar to this LARP one that I have here, but sometimes they're even longer, where they have a big blade, easily as long as certain short swords at times, and you can do slashing attacks with hewing spears pretty well. Because Hector's spearhead, it doesn't have a huge blade, it's not going to do much with a wide slash like this. And so he goes, Achilles ducks, and interesting, it's like a big, look, it's stylized, it looks good. I think that works. You would want to raise your shield though, but there you go, brings the spear back again. Low thrust. Is he trying to go for the heel? Achilles, is this foreshadowing about a certain heel thing that might incapacitate someone? Who knows? But keep your shield raised, mate. Look at how low the shield is at this point. For someone who is supposed to be a master trained combatant of this period of warfare, one of the most consistent things should always be keeping the shield up as often as possible. So low attack, Hector's just trying to get distance. There's obviously a thrust, good, but again, he has to raise the shield to block it. He does it in time, but the shield should have been there to begin with. And then look at that overswing. He's I know he's kind of going with the momentum to get a thrust, but you didn't need to throw the shield all the way over to get the thrust. You could just raise, thrust, and look at the, man, shields can defend so much. So all the way back. Hector, you have a shield. So I find it interesting that in a lot of times in this fight scene, these combatants are opting to dodge the weapon rather than block with the shield. And people might say it's more dynamic. The shield would be just say, no, you can do dynamic blocking with the shield, even keeping in front, bang, block, hit, and all the ways that you could do it, because they're showing these shields that are essentially very light, or much lighter than what steel shields would be for these combatants. And so they're already flailing the shield around. They could use the shields in really dynamic, interesting ways and choose to block with them rather than opting to dodge. It's like they're forgetting they even have shields. So the question is, would this strike have hit Hector? Maybe. Let's see. It's going forward. It doesn't really move it much forward than that. But seeing this coming to your face, yeah, I could see why you would kind of dodge back like that. Knocks it aside with his spear. Okay, I don't like this move. It's unneeded. Achilles has fully extended the spear already like this. And so at this point, the spear isn't really a threat to Hector. And so Hector, who's standing here, all right, you don't need to knock aside the spear because it's not a threat. And was Achilles even blocking himself in this thrust? Let's go back and see. No, remember, this is the part where he throws the shield behind him in that thrust, and now it's fully extended. And so when we get to this point, yeah, the shield is still completely behind him. At least there's not a lot of these moments in this fight scene, but this is probably so far the worst part of the fight scene from a technical standpoint, because Achilles is massively vulnerable. He's withdrawn his shield, overextended with a thrust, and instead of knocking aside with your spear, it's right there. Just thrust forward. Bang! And Achilles would either have to dodge because his shield isn't ready to defend, or you could have potentially killed him right there because he's left himself wide open. What's interesting, just from, again, a technical standpoint, Achilles is displayed in this fight scene as the more aggressive and talented, skillful fighter, yet from a technical standpoint, he is the first one from the maneuvers and choreography so far to make the most severe blunder and leave himself open. Look, there have been people who have left themselves open to this point, but he can't defend with the spear because he's extended it so far and the shield is out of the way. And so Achilles is the first one to make the worst technical mistake. There were technical mistakes before, but to me this is a big one. And so Hector makes a big technical mistake here. He could have just, like I said, thrusted forward. He opts to slap aside the spear. Okay, so it's an all-right move from the position he's in, but the position he's in, he shouldn't have been in because it's a really bad position where he had the shield like way back, his spear gets knocked aside, and then is going in for a kind of shield strike. One thing that I will give props for in this position is that Achilles is striking with the edge of the shield. That's one of the big errors when people think shield bashing. They bash forward when that would just disperse all the force over a really large surface area. When you want to actually strike with the shield, you do it with the edge, concentrating the force, smaller surface area, right there, smacking like that, and good to see. That's how you'd want to bash with the shield. So swings over. Hector dodges, Hector did this big wide thing. He lowered his shield to do it, so I'd have to dodge from that position. Again, keep your shield up, Hector, though. Dodges under, and they're going to have to both recover. He goes for a swipe, and then he's basically swiping back with the shield instead of recovering his spear and thrusting. It knocks. Hector's going for a stab, good to see. And it's actually, okay, it's not really an attack, it's a slap aside. He's defending with his shield, swings it really wide. They seem to like to do this, right? They like kind of doing a exchange of momentum where if they're gonna, and this is wrong, you shouldn't do this, but if you're gonna thrust with a spear, they like throwing it back, and then if they come back with a shield, they retract their spear, and they're doing a lot of kind of this motion when you don't need to do that. Is it to convey movement to make it more dynamic? You definitely could do it with the shield by striking, bringing the spear, keeping the shield there, and doing movements like this, right? And making sure the shield is always forward. You would still get that wide kind of movements, and especially instead of doing like this where you're leaving yourself open, you could move with it, right? Depending where the enemy is and stuff, and absolutely there's a lot of movement that you can do to convey dynamic motion. Unfortunately here they're going with the more technically flawed approach. So Achilles is going for a thrust, which, again, Hector, you done the same thing. He went for a thrust, withdrew his shield, leaving him wide open, and look how close this comes. He has to dodge, and it misses him by like a hair. And look, I think it's cool to have that, intense kind of suspense where we're like, look how close the strike came. You could still have this type of, exchange where a strike came really close without the, opponent, Hector in this case, making a very big new mistake by always withdrawing his shield and throwing it out of the way. It would be really cool if maybe Achilles did like a feint where he went down for a strike, making Hector lower the shield to try and block, and then he comes and then hits really quickly. And then it's that moment where Hector's like, oh, and the spear comes so close. All right, so he knocks the spear up with his shield. This is interesting. I don't mind it. So Achilles just got the spear knocked aside and is bringing it around back above the shield and is going to be doing a ha-ha-ha from. This would be a over-the-top move in a real fight, but because this guy is supposed to be almost superhuman in his skill, you could try and sell it, and for me, it works. So, goes right there, then he goes for the... Okay, probably holds it too long, because from that position, there's not many ways that Achilles can strike. It actually puts him in a very vulnerable position. If he was taking advantage of an opening to just try and go with the momentum where the spear got knocked aside and it gets brought around to here and he quickly does like a stab, maybe you could sell it. But because he holds it so long and then is that actually puts him in a pretty vulnerable position just because there's not a lot of options from that stance. And so Hector, he could do a lot in taking advantage of this, but he just backs up heaps and heaps, not taking advantage of the opening, really. So they see that thrust. At least he blocks with the shield. He just quickly slaps it aside because the shield is open, knocks Achilles' spear all the way around. Like, big, wide... Okay, this is interesting. He's like a ha-ha thing. I don't mind that. There are some what look to be almost exaggerated stances in combat that, if you get an advantage, it works really well. I'm not sure it works well for, you know, a big, wide, slapping kind of strike with a spear. It's not a hewing spear. Warding it off. But the stance does convey huge style, and for that, I think it works. There's a maneuver in certain rapier treatises where you do this wide kind of side step to bring the sword kind of around, and then you thrust, and you end up being in this really kind of interesting sideways stepping attack like that. It looks a bit flamboyant, but to kind of curve around, so like, yeah, you want to kind of curve around and then thrust down behind someone's guard, and then you put yourself off center to avoid the counterattack. Here's an image from one of the Hema treatises. It's actually a very martially viable maneuver, even though it looks a bit more flamboyant. So I'm not against flamboyant moves if they're more justified. So I think I'm on the fence. I like that they're showing style. I don't like what he's trying to do with it because, yeah, the slap, like, it just comes in, he blocks with the shield, comes back, returns with a thrust. Hector, what are you doing with your shield, mate? It's like the shield wasn't even there. You're just holding it to the side. And then, all right, this is where Hector actually does pull out something interesting because this seems to be intentional. He is purposely letting the spear thrust come in. And watch what he does here, okay? So he then jams it between his spear and shield. So what's interesting... All right, I don't like... Achilles whacks at Hector's spear. This would not break a spear shaft, just a shield edge like that. In actual fact, even if this shield had a really sharpened edge to try and cut through it, like a proper, you know, solid spear shaft that's not going to be made out of balsa wood or anything like that. It'll be difficult to chop through this in one strike with an axe, let alone a shield. So this right here to me is huge bullcrap. It's not going to break the spear, but Hector's still in that position because he's trapped Achilles' spear, and so what he does... No, he just lets it go. I thought he was going to try and break it here. Okay, Achilles just withdraws it. I thought this was the part where he broke Achilles' spear, but no, it happens a bit later. All right, I don't like that. No, that Hector's spear should not have been broken from that angle. And before, like, because again, the shield is blunt. And so with Hector, he's got the shield there, he's got the spear here. With Achilles' shield coming in, knocking it so much, it would just knock the spear sideways, like boing, like that. It wouldn't break it. Ah, come off it. This is interesting. It's like a battle of strength and leverage. Achilles is lower, and so he has a lower center of gravity. And so I actually like his position for what he does here, because by having a lower center of gravity, he would be able to get underneath and actually retain his position more easily, push Hector off his balance. That's good. I like it. So push, Achilles is lower, then pushes back. Hector gets knocked off his balance. And his spear's broken, so he just throws it aside. I know he has got a sword, but why doesn't he draw it? He's got plenty of time to draw the sword at this point. Okay, it's very odd that he's not drawing his sword. Because instead of bracing yourself, you've got time to draw the sword. And then, of course, he's waiting for Achilles' spear thrust. Comes in, slap. You don't need a slap aside. You've got a shield. You can just block with it. And then, again, more slapping aside with the shield. Okay, this is where it happens. So he kind of knocks Achilles' spear down. Okay, from this position, it's far more reasonable that you might be able to snap a wooden shaft like that, but the shaft would generally be stronger even than someone's grip. And so with Hector jamming his knee down on it like that, rather than snapping, it would either knock Achilles' hand down, yeah, that's really it. Or knock it out of his grip, because the spear should be stronger than Achilles' grip. It's like these made out of really flimsy shafts, and they just snap, like that. And now he draws the sword. It must have been in the shield, but it looks like he's drawing it a bit higher. And then he slashes at Achilles. Achilles, like, where is your shield again? Let's go back to this point here. Again, your shield, you're just holding it off to the side like it's not important. And that leaves him really open for this slash that Hector does. And then he blocks with the shield. He draws his. There's a spin! First real spin in this fight scene. So far they've been kind of sparingly with their spins. Is this one justified? There are ways to justify spins, as we have addressed in Scene Autopsy. They're not always bad. Is this one bad? So we'll watch. Hector's sword has been kind of... let's have a look. He's slashed with the sword. Alright, so Achilles kind of knocks the sword aside, which... he's going with the momentum. I think this one mostly works. He's trying to draw the sword, but he wants to draw it in such a way where he goes with the momentum and strikes back like that. It doesn't leave him terribly open. He's got armor, and so there's that, depending on how well the armor's supposed to work. I think this one is not terrible. It's not terrible. It's not great. You know what would be good? Hector could have actually done a spin here. With Achilles' strike, he could have actually stepped forward and then knocked Achilles aside. That would actually be a really good attack, just from the position he's in. There's a spin that could be justified. So it comes in. Hector blocks. Interesting that they hold it a bit too long here. Those are definitely bronze swords, or they should be, and so they would be gouging into each other right here. So Achilles withdraws the sword, but Hector's arm would be in the same position. And so I don't think that's good. By withdrawing the sword, and Hector's sword would be so close, he could easily slash down at Achilles' legs. Is definitely close enough. And so this is a bad move by Achilles, but he withdraws the sword while Hector's sword is so close. Goes in for a thrust. Hector dodged underneath by the... Look, see where his hand is? See where Hector's hand is? Like, through that entire thing, it already showed him ducking, which means he wasn't defending with his shield or his sword, and their legs are completely vulnerable. A big slash along the leg. Ooh, again, Achilles left himself really open. This is the second big technical flaw in terms of leaving yourself open, and it's done by Achilles. So far, Hector has actually made less mistakes than Achilles here. And Achilles seems to be blessed by the gods because he's been able to break Hector's spear when it shouldn't have. And even though Hector shouldn't have been able to break Achilles' spear, he was in a much better position to be able to achieve it than what Achilles did. So I would actually say Hector's actually the more talented combatant in this fight so far. Again, Hector, what are you doing with your sword, mate? You dodge underneath this, and you're withdrawing your sword when... Look! See right here? Hector, right here? Don't... Just slash! Like, oh, you could probably cut really deep into an artery there. You see, he's wide open! Hector! What are you doing? All right, so this is a big flaw that Hector does. Achilles has two big dum-dums, and Hector now has a very big dum-dum moment. Oh. Yeah, bad. He just withdraws it. Oh, wait, now he slashes. Instead of slashing, or he could have slashed right there, plenty of time. He decides to withdraw, and then he slashes, and Achilles blocks with his greave right there. Again, like, what are you aiming for, Hector? Like, there's a lot of leg, and you should know that Achilles has armor on his feet. Don't aim so low. Aim for his exposed thigh. It's almost like two big flaws very close together. Oh, you're doing so well, Hector. So, Achilles withdraws his leg after being hit. Seems to... don't lower your shield now. Achilles is really open on this shoulder right here and is lowering his shield even further. Not good. Okay, now he raises it a little. Hector, what are you doing with your shield, mate? He's just holding it to the side. Not good. Achilles is going to go up for a thrust. Hector has to dodge because his shield isn't there. Look, it shows good motion. I like that stance. It's like, ugh, like that. That's all right. Slash up, sideways cut. Did that actually hit? There's a clang. It's like it's hitting the shield here. or it's clanged off the armor. Is this one of, like, it's so subtle, it's hard to see. But was this a slash at the armor? Because the real question is, Achilles, why are you slashing at the chest? Slash at the throat, mate, right there. So for being such a, you know, incredibly, like, talented, you know, warrior, why are you just aiming for the chest here? Because like there, maybe he's kind of aiming for the, I don't know. That is so close, that definitely had to have made contact. So Hector goes down for a really strong cut. Achilles blocks. I like the position of the shield there. Bringing the shield close in to kind of like absorb the impact. Works great. I like that stance. But Hector, look what he does with his shield for this. Again, the shield is behind it. You could do a big cut and still keep the shield here. You don't need to go, like, come on. All right, it's a big hit. Achilles comes in now. He just brings in the shield to block. And then Achilles kind of, he follows through. So Achilles, he went in for like an attack. Was that a slash or a cut? Let's have a look. It's kind of like a forward, yeah, he's leading with the blade. So he's going there, and then he's going to bring it down and come with a thrust like that. And let's take a look. All right. Okay. Why are you holding the shield there? I know it's maybe to try and not block his body, so, and he was bracing himself in that block before, and then he went for an attack and has held the shield in position. So it's not like he's necessarily withdrew it. He has repositioned his body and has held the shield in the same spot. You could almost justify it to get the momentum ready for this thrust that is about to do. And the pose looks great. This is one of those few times in a fight scene where I'd almost accept this as the rule of cool, where it's such a dynamic motion. He's got this great kind of position where it's like this, and he's going to go in for a big thrust, and it's going to end in such a cool hero pose. I think I would even go for the rule of cool with having the shield position there, just to get this dynamic ending pose, which happens right here, like that. That looks awesome, okay? Actually, I don't know. It looks pretty silly just holding the shield like that, but I think you could sell it. I think this is mostly being sold because it's been a forward, he's on a big forward thrust, where it's actually kind of ended like that, really. And he decided to hold the shield there to focus on the momentum of the thrust. I think this one is sold. Oh, yeah, it looks awesome. One of the big flaws, of course, is that this is a bronze blade that just went massive thrust into a shield and received absolutely no damage at all. Do we get a closer? So Hector just got knocked back almost, you know, I was going to say a mile, but hyperbole, but you know, you get what I say. And no damage on that bronze sword in the slightest. For a bronze sword, like, the blade will have just gone curved, like just right up from a thrust like that. This is the reason why bronze blades actually, see this ridge line that you see, this is accurate, okay, so see this ridge line right along there. A lot of bronze blades even had more pronounced ridges than that because they were so prone to bending. Dynamic pose, look at those steely eyes. Hector comes back in. Yeah, he just slaps it aside because Achilles is just, maybe he's trying to intimidate him, hold the blade out. So he lets it in. This is very stylized. He's been holding the shield behind him. He lets the strike knock his sword aside, and then he moves behind to block with the shield. Look, from a technical standpoint, it's very dumb, unless he's trying to taunt Hector in this position, because he's just like, it's very odd. Overly stylized. Hector goes for a spin. I don't know, not sure this one's justified, because he goes in, wide slash, he's off balance. Look, you could say he's trying to go with the momentum because he's like, oh, and he's going to just go and try and swing it around. Not sure it was needed, but he again blocks with the shield, goes with the momentum, goes in with a wide strike. And Achilles is still holding the shield behind him. This has to be because it's taunting him at this point. Like, I don't even need my shield. I will hold the shield behind my head and take you on just like this. because that's the only way you could try and justify a warrior as talented as Achilles doing this. There's no technical validity or benefit to what he's doing. Like, from a technical standpoint, it's ridiculous. Therefore, I'll let it pass as taunting. The thing is, though, with a Hector's wide strike coming in, if he had a way to block that strike, well, maybe, no, because I was going to say, if you attack the arm instead of blocking the blade, the attack still might land. But if you just hit hard enough on Hector's arm that's coming around, so Hector's right here, is coming for a big strike, and if Achilles hit the arm and prevented the strike from going all the way, you could potentially chop off Hector's arm here, because the arm is actually exposed. Look at that, see that? So anyway, Achilles blocks, knocks it up, tries to stab down, Hector blocks, again, then Hector isn't really holding his shield in position properly still. Achilles, still taunting with the shield behind, goes for a thrust. Hector had his shield low, raises it, more thrusts. Hector going for a leg strike. Achilles seems to have pushed it aside with his greave. I don't mind that. But Hector, what are you doing with the shield, mate? You're just letting it hang down. That's the biggest flaw with this fight. So, big wide slash. Hector needs to dodge, duck under, because, you know, he's forgotten his shield exists. I like this. Achilles, well, no, I don't like the stance, but from the stance, the follow-up position, Achilles does a big overswing, and Hector's head is right there. You might not have enough time to get the sword there, but his shoulder is right there, so he just smacks with the shoulder. Usually, I have a big pet peeve of people doing or landing attacks with unarmed parts of the thing, like punching when, like, they're in a fight, they have a sword in this hand, but they decide to throw a punch. The punch lands, which means if they attacked with the sword, it could have killed their opponent. This one isn't exactly like that, because, is it though? Because the flaw would be if it wouldn't have taken that much extra time for the sword strike to land rather than the elbow. He's wide open. He's wide open. Instead of hitting, I think I need to withdraw that. The fact that I thought this was okay, because it's not that much difference between landing that and just going slash. Just like letting the elbow not extend and bringing it around, and then just doing a draw cut. Would have sliced Hector's neck or head wide open. Another poor choice from Achilles. So Hector almost has 3 big technical mistakes. I know there's lots of little ones, but in terms of the big ones, Hector had 2. This seems to be almost the 3rd or 4th for Achilles. I'm losing count. Knock. He could have ended he could have killed Hector then. Hector goes for a big wide slash. Achilles doesn't bother him about his shield. Hector withdrawing his shield. Now is just almost flailing about wildly. Achilles still has his control. He goes up for one of his signature jumping moves, trying to get there. Yeah, he's trying to get it right into Hector's neck, like we saw at the beginning of the film. This is where I don't think it works as well, because he's using a sword, he's closer, and he's withdrawing his shield to be able to get the big like that. And so all Hector needs to do on this side is raise his shield and stab, and Achilles can't really dodge. Okay, doesn't work as well. Don't like this one. Hector blocks with his shield instead of trying to attack back. Then he runs back forward. He's wildly wild, attracting the shield behind him in the exchanges, and they get into an interesting bind here. Achilles seems to get leverage over it, throws it aside. Hector's pretty... Just raise your shield, man! My goodness! Slash, like, very close. It could have sliced Hector's neck right open, because, again, they're forgetting they have shields. So, as fun as this fight scene is, and it is a lot of fun, there's actually a lot of technical flaws with it. But the fact that they're just not using the shields properly, that's one big issue. There's other issues as well. Hector goes underneath. This is interesting. Hector goes underneath, not using his shield though. Slashes again. Achilles seems to trap the sword, knock it down, goes up for a slash. Just the whole time, Hector's just... Look at all this, right? We're going to go from here, But even before then, Hector's basically forgotten about his shield the whole time. Ready? Shield. There's just no shield, not using his shield. He's just all like, there, finally, he does the shield for something. Achilles knocks it. But all that whole exchange, he just was letting it hang down. And look, Achilles isn't that much better here. At least the shield is a little bit forward at this point, but he is letting it withdraw. Like, he throws it all the way back at this point. Going down. Okay, so this is like the closest anyone has ever come to harming Achilles. He actually nicked the armor. Achilles is a bit surprised, but Achilles, why are you so surprised? You literally withdrew the shield, and that's what would happen because you were wide open. We'll go back, right? Look at what he's doing with his shield. He put it there. See where it is? See there, from this point, he's swinging the shield back. So if I get on Achilles' side, he's swinging it back, just like that, okay? And he doesn't bring it back forward, and so it's not like smack, smack, slash. And that whole time, he's just like, I will hold my shield open and let you slash at it. Alright, so Hector goes in for a big... this is interesting. Achilles seemingly is either didn't get the shield close enough to block, or he knowingly let it pass inside the shield and traps Hector's sword. This is interesting. Then I actually really like this. Okay, by letting the sword come in, he like lets it in and then he moves aside, he pulls it down and traps it, and the sword is now angled down on the flat. And so if we go to where Achilles is, shield is here, pulling it, and the flat is pressing up against his breastplate. That would be perfectly fine, it wouldn't really cut, and Hector's arm is in a really difficult position. This is easily my favorite maneuver of the entire fight. It's technically complex, it's martially viable, and Hector genuinely is in a really awkward position to be able to get leverage or strength here. Love it! So Achilles... Okay, so Achilles was going for a kill shot. Look at how close that is. Hector's in a really awkward position, and he just barely manages to bring his shield in to defend against it. I love it. I think that's really good. And Hector still is not in a great position to try and find an opening, so Achilles does a kick. Kicks him back, and then he trips over a rock. Oh. All right, so because like that last maneuver was the most technically complex and sophisticated maneuver of the fight scene. I was almost going to say Hector was still the more talented combatant because he made less mistakes, but because Achilles pulled off that maneuver, which honestly, just like gorgeous, okay, that brings Achilles back as being a, you know, in terms of the technical competency on display, his backup probably better than Achilles, maybe. Then yeah, a kick. But then Hector trips on a stone.
Get up, Prince of Troy.
And it's mostly over. He lost his shield. Dude, you wouldn't be caring about crawling away. You've lost your shield. That's like the most important bit of kit you have. Probably even more important than your weapon, honestly. Instead of crawling away, you'll be like lunging to grab your shield again. Bad choice here. This is a big dumb moment for Hector, choosing not to get the shield back. Just crawling away. It's right there, man. This is why you're crawling the opposite direction. Pick up your freaking shield.
Won't let a stone take my glory.
Now Achilles throws his shield. Like, what Achilles should really do is like, Hector, your shield's there. Why are you No. And I do think it's in line with Achilles' character to like, all right, for some reason you're not getting shield, fine, I'll throw away my shield. He wants an even fight. Yeah, but dumb for Hector. I could see why Achilles then decides to throw away the shield. And now Hector's just kind of flailing about. He picked up, is that what, he decided to get the spearhead and dual wield. Like, dual wielding spearhead and sword, not better than sword and shield, okay? Shield is vastly more protective. So he goes in for a wide slash. Yeah, look, I will give it, this one seems like it would have hit if Achilles didn't dodge. I think the blade is angled. See right there, you can kind of see the blade angled a bit too far away from Achilles, but it's so fast, and the motion of the arm makes it look like it would have hit if Achilles didn't dodge. So that's good. Big wide overswing. Achilles, what are you doing with your sword though? Like this big wide attack. Achilles is dodging. What are you doing? Like, this is a big bad moment for Achilles again. He forgot his sword existed. Hector is wide open here. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Achilles, you could have done something with your sword. And then he's holding it, like not doing anything, just dodging. This is interesting where he goes down. Oh, okay. It's like a spin, but dodge at the same time. So Achilles is here and is dodging under and is going to bring his attack around in a spin and hit by the look of it. And slash. All right, I think that was pretty cool. Goes right through. So that's not armor then, because it actually cuts right through the cloth. That was just, I don't know, a loincloth, basically. You'd think, because they try to make it look like armor with these, metal things, but no, just cloth, doesn't do a thing, gets slashed on his leg. And as to the technical complexity of this move from Achilles, he's not doing anything good with his sword here, but going with it, that does make Achilles look like, a more competent fighter, pulling off something far more complex and difficult. Hector here tries to knock it aside. He's trying to slash at Achilles, but look, this part I think they're selling quite well in terms of that Hector is at the end of his rope and is just kind of flailing about. He's trying hard, but he's losing it. And Achilles is in complete control, just as precise as he was at the beginning of the fight, where Hector has lost that kind of precision. That is great narrative kind of storytelling in the fight scene to kind of show where the fight's going. And so, slashing, what is he aiming for there? That's a bit dumb, that's a bad, Hector, what are you aiming for? Really nothing. There, that's aim for Achilles. Achilles is forced to block. What is he trying to do there when he grabs it? Is he just trying to push it aside? This is a bit strange. He raises his arm, seems to push aside. Okay. Goes in for a slash. Hector dodges. Oh, this was good. Hector going for the leg. Achilles raises the leg. This shows like great kind of area awareness from Achilles. Like he probably saw the telegraph, the attack coming low. He didn't even need to look, and he just raises his leg, letting it flow underneath. Achilles in vast more control of this fight now. Hector almost losing it. So I think this is the part where the fight scene really does raise its quality in terms of what they are trying to tell. So like I said, the narrative that they're showing in the fight scene is top tier. Some of the technical combat elements were pretty poor, honestly, in a lot of areas. And if they got those more technical aspects correct, it would have added the immersion authenticity of the fight scene. All right, so Hector running in. Again, wide flail. Achilles just dodges, but he's dodging under. If he just thrust up as he dodged, Hector would be in a pretty poor position. He kind of does. He tried to thrust there, but misses. Don't know what he's aiming at. Hector, wide flail with the spear. Now, he's got a spearhead. Hector's been slashing at it, using that spearhead like it's a sword. No, it's still a spear. He should be thrusting, and he could cut or thrust with his sword, but he's just flailing the spearhead around like it's a sword. He goes in with his sword, block. He's just holding the spear down. He's not really dual wielding to the full advantage here because he's just using his sword to strike now, not really exchanging it with the spearhead. Achilles slashes, Hector dodges. He tries to use the spear then. There was a little thrust here, see? This part, yeah, right there, where he goes in, thrust with the spear. Not sure what it's aimed at. Achilles pushes him back. In full control. They face off at each other. Alright, this is interesting. So, disarm. Love this. See that? So, Hector's going in for a thrust. Achilles moves aside, grabs, smacks up with his arm right at the point of contact, which, see that right here? He's going to smack forward. See, this is great. This is a great disarm. Like, I've seen disarms in a lot of fight scenes where people just let go of their weapon. It happened in Obi-Wan, actually. So it was when Darth Vader was fighting Reva in my Obi-Wan fight scene Autopsy. Darth Vader just kicks Reva, and she decides to drop her weapon because, what? So there are some really crap disarms where people just let go. No, this is a fight. The combatants are going to be trying to hold onto the weapon a lot, and as a result, you need to push against the resistance of them holding onto the weapon to get a proper disarm. They do that here. Brilliant. Look, like, Achilles has to really push in here to get Hector to lose his grip. Pushing, 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 and only there does the grip get broken. Brilliant. Love that. Hector went in for a wide slash in return. Now Achilles has both, and look at this. Okay, so he goes through for a slash, misses. This is a really interesting exchange what's about to happen here. We see multiple spins, yet each one is carrying the momentum around. And so in this instance, because he's like slash, 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 right? It might have actually taken more time after like this slash, to stop that momentum and then return. And so by spinning with the momentum, it might actually be faster by spinning than not spinning. And that's what could sell it. This is what makes this type of spin far more believable because it's so quick. Let's have a look. Have a look. Bang, bang. Like, look at that. Look at this. So we're going to watch it again. Slash, slash, miss, bang! It's almost like each one was a misdirect, throwing Hector off balance. He doesn't really know the attacks are coming really, really fast. It goes bang, 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 slash, right in. That looks friggin' badass. That's good spinning. Yes, that was awesome. Spinning was a good trick in this move. Let's watch this again. Bang, bang, bang. And then ends with a spear right into his collarbone. That was awesome. That was legitimately cool. This is a great example of where you can sell some more flamboyant, even spinning over-the-top moves in a more realistic way, and then it feels more authentic, more immersive, and it just lands with a bang. It's great. So that went through his armor. So I would agree, a spear thrust, strong downward thing, has a chance to get through armor. It's almost like it's in between some of these plates as well. One interesting thing, instead of like this kind of ring of blood around, it should actually be like almost a line. See, in the angle of my hand here, like, because the spearhead was, flat, and so there should be like a line cut on either end. On this end, and on that end, going down a little bit and then up a little bit like that, just to convey that, hey, this is actually a broader, wider spearhead that went through. But as I mentioned, I could believe a downwards, stab like that could puncture classical period armor. Yes, this should be bronze armor as well, by the way. Hector falls down. All right, so this I'm not so sure about. So Hector's basically done. It's like, the bronze sword. Don't know. I don't know. It's hard for me to decide. Let me know what you think in the comments. This is bronze, kind of odd-looking armor. It's not actual cuirass. There are different, like, square bits of bronze thing on top of some type of leather cuirass. So, honestly, a sword would have higher chances of puncturing through that type of armor, and especially in between the plates. I could allow it, but armor is meant to do something, okay? Achilles has all the time to try and build up momentum. He's even got his fist behind it, pushing it forward. That sells it a bit better. I'm on the edge, but a little bit on the side, just a little bit of accepting it. I think this one is sold for the technology level, for the type of armor. The armor that he's wearing just doesn't look great. If you like I said, odd. It's not a good armor design. So if he gets in between the plates, heavy enough thrust, even a bronze sword might be able to puncture the armor. In this specific instance, I think I'll allow it. Barely, but I'll allow it. And then the fight is over. Hector is defeated. And that is Hector versus Achilles from the movie Troy. My overall impressions at the end, still one of the better fight scenes out there for the tempo, the motion, the dynamic kind of exchanges. In terms of the technical side, It's honestly about 50-50. Actually, probably even more, there was more worse things in terms of the technical maneuvers. The shields are the big issue. They were forgetting the shields so much, okay? But there were some really cool moments that had a good technical validity in it. So by far, it's not a dumpster fire. There's actually some good moments in it. So maybe 40% good, 60% bad, or close. It's hard. It could be 50-50, but it's around there in terms of good, competent, combative maneuvers versus dumb, stupid things that is unrealistic and they're not doing the right thing. But that is it. Achilles versus Hector, Scene Autopsy. Hope you have enjoyed. Hope to see you on the next video here on Shadowversity. And until that time, farewell.